Welcome to College Football Monday. I'm your host, PP. I've got Sam Jesse here, and we're also being joined by Robert Irby. This is a Sons of Saturday live show brought to you by Jack and Coke. College Football Monday is our national show, so we're going to be talking some playoff today. We're going to be talking some bowls. We will do VT Corner, as we always do, a little bit later in the show. We got some more portal stuff to talk about, gentlemen, but how you guys feeling? We're just one day away from the quarterfinals.
I'm feeling good. I am excited for these games, man. I think we have four really interesting matchups that we'll get into. And then I think, when we get to VT Corner, we previewed the Hokies and the Golden Gophers yesterday. We'll talk a little bit more about that today, but I think it could be a little bit more interesting game than we maybe originally thought, and still some question marks around Minnesota. So a lot to get to tonight.
Trying to get my light right there. How you feeling, Rob?
I'm feeling great. 2025 is upon us, and I'm just hoping for some better football. The first round was such a dud. I really like the matchups. We got some closer spreads. Should be some good football.
Yeah, we feel due, right? Like it feels like one of these playoff games is due to be a classic.
I agree with that. Well, Sam, why don't you kick us off with the cheers?
Yeah, my cheers is to what has been a really fun, crazy, wild 2024 of college football. We have a new playoff system. We had a ton of new stars. We had some records being broken, some big time career records. We'll talk about Cam Ward a bit, I guess, but that's a pretty big record he broke.
Yeah.
I think this was maybe the most pivotal calendar year in the history of the sport of college football. I think you could argue that.
Oh, wow.
With NIL, a 12-team playoff, 2 transfer portal windows, pretty insane stuff.
Yeah. So, cheers, man.
Cheers.
Cheers to a positive future for college football. Everyone's so doom and gloom about it.
Yeah.
We get to watch Boise and Penn State in the Fiesta Bowl for a shot at the Natty. Come on, that's perfect.
Yeah. Right. How many Fiesta Bowls have we seen Boise in that truly don't matter? This is the one. Like, this is the shot they've been asking for. This is awesome.
Yeah, it'll be fun, and that's going to be the first one we preview after we talk a little bit about these games. You'll see I'm drinking water out of a shaker glass here. I have blood work tomorrow, fellas, and I already know the liver enzyme count is going to be off the charts, so I'm just trying to juice the numbers.
This one day will make the difference.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So I decided no beer tonight, but I see Sam's got something to drink. I think Rob might have something over there.
No, I just got water.
Oh, you're doing water too? Okay.
Yeah, we've got all the Hokies coming into town for the Mayo Bowl this weekend, so we're preemptively hydrating.
Will you be able to get out more than one night, or is it just game day for you?
TBD.
Okay. I know you got the little one at home, so we will see, but I'm looking forward to seeing you, buddy. All right. So if you have any questions, hop in the chat or like the video, subscribe, all that good stuff that helps us out. We'd appreciate it. But if you have any questions for us as we get through here, go ahead, fire away. We have the Fiesta Bowl, the Peach Bowl, the Rose Bowl, and the Sugar Bowl. Easy for me to say, but those are the 4 games we're going to preview. I did want to talk a little bit about bowl games in general. And me and Sam already did the thing with Billy, whether they matter, whether they don't matter. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like observations from these bowl games. And I guess we could just start with the ACC because 1 in 9 in the games, we had 13 teams that made bowl games, which is like, oh man, the conference going to be playing almost every day, and maybe we'll, bring in some nice money. And they did. I mean, fortunately, the results don't matter so much unless you're talking about the playoff games. But we lost those 2 playoff games, and then maybe because we had 2 teams in the playoff, every team had to play a better opponent. Do you think that's factoring into the reason we're losing these games?
No, I think the teams just aren't good.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about 2 UNC and NC State both lost to G5 teams.
Right,
like that's not.
And Toledo, a MAC team beat.
Oh my God, yes, 3 of them. Yeah,
and not a good MAC team either. Like I think they were safely behind Miami, safely behind Ohio. Yeah.
So that was just a theory I had. Is maybe because if we had only gotten 1 team in the playoff, all of these matchups would have been different. And so a couple of these were close. Like Miami, we can talk about the Cam Ward thing here. He doesn't play in the second half. If he does play the second half, it's a virtual certainty they win, in my opinion. I They talked about this on Cover 3. I was wondering if he was going to come back in because the game was close. Iowa State had just gone down and scored. It's like, well, maybe he's got one more drive left in him. And they didn't do that. What were your thoughts, Rob, on just him only playing half of the game?
I mean, my first reaction was, I was pretty annoyed. Like, you're seeing this poor backup, Emory Williams, who's clearly not prepared for the moment.
It's their third string.
Yeah, right. Having to go out there and play hero ball, and this all-world quarterback is sitting there on the sideline watching. I was certainly feeling sympathy for that kid. And then you hear, it's planned. They were just trying to get him the record, whatever. But like, I don't know. I feel like it would be one thing if they were up like 17 at halftime. And then you're like, all right, yeah, Cam, why don't you sit? But they were up 3 at halftime. Like this was a game.
And it was a fun game. Like that's to me, in terms of entertainment value, I wanted to see him play. In terms of maybe the people who had bet on the game expected Cam Ward to play the entire game.
Yeah.
Well, I full disclosure, I didn't expect him to play the full game, but I thought it, like, from a gambling perspective, real quick tangent, the big turn in this game was Miami fumbled the opening snap.
Yep.
And then Iowa State converted a 4th down and then recovered their own fumble and then scored a touchdown. That was the difference in the game.
Yep. So, I mean, Miami effectively dominated the game when Cam Ward was in there.
Mm-hmm.
And, for the whole second half, their defense couldn't stop anyone, which has been the case all season. But, they're basically running the ball. Damian Martinez is going crazy. They're just trying to milk the clock, basically to ward off this rally from Iowa State. And they just came short of that. And I don't know. I think again, I understand the process, but I just feel like at the end of the day, you're playing a football game and like your teammates are going out there and are playing a game that, puts their bodies at risk. Right. And I know that's why he wouldn't play, is he doesn't want to be at risk, but at the same time, it's not great optics. And I know I sound like an old man yelling at a cloud, but what can you do?
I fundamentally don't understand it. I think Josh Pate tried to make sense of it. Tom Fornelli said it basically doesn't matter. Like, we kind of assumed he might have opted out anyway, so him playing a half is better than nothing. If you decide to play the game, play the game. Like, I don't get it from a competitive nature standpoint. I don't get it. Can you only get hurt in a first half? Like, I don't understand it. I just don't.
Yeah, I don't fully understand the logic. I understand the idea. I think it is a culture problem and not a specific to Miami. I think it's a college football as a sport culture problem where we believe that the odds of getting hurt in a bowl game are exponentially higher than other games. Like, that's just something we made up as a sport. And I also think there's this idea that if he sprains his ankle, he's somehow not a first round pick.
Right. Like, unless you completely Willis McGahee your knee,
very few
nothing's
injuries.
Going to change.
Yeah, there's very few injuries that would last over a year at this point. Like, even ACLs, like, are
Stephen Gosnell came back better.
Yeah, I mean, Adrian Peterson came back in like 6 months,
and he ran for 2,000 yards.
Yeah, it's I don't understand the logic behind it. If it was their plan all along and the team knew it, that's one thing, and I understand that. But to me, it points to yeah.
I don't understand.
Like, it
made that decision.
Yeah, college football making this shift away from individual teams and like makeups of players into an individually driven sport that's a bit closer to what basketball is in my mind. Like, that points to that. Same thing with Colorado. Like, if we want to move on to another game, they got boat raced. And quite frankly, they haven't won a good game the entire time that Deion's been there. They do not have a ranked win in the past 2 years, under 500 against conference competition. I think you could put that to 8-11 now, since BYU is technically a conference team.
Right.
So, like, again, good players didn't really result in the team, and it didn't really matter for the optics of Colorado football. And I think Miami kind of the same way.
I appreciate the fact that Shador and Travis Hunter went out there. It's not that they weren't compensated. And people will say, about just playing in these bowl games. You know, they've got to protect their future. They need to get paid, secure, whatever. They were paid to play this year. Like
Yep.
you've been paid money to play, and now your team's in a game and you're not playing, or you're only playing half. And I understand it's an exhibition game. Well, guess what? Miami really made it look like an exhibition game by pulling the quarterback at halftime. We could at least pretend like these games count, can't we? Can't we at least pretend that they count? Because they do count. They are not exhibition games. They go on the final record. So treating it like an exhibition game, I think all of Miami, their coaching staff and Cam Ward should all be embarrassed, because I thought you made a mockery of the entire thing. And I it's the Pop-Tarts Bowl. I know it's not a playoff game, but a lot of investment goes into making sure these guys have a good time. They're paid NIL, all this stuff, and you can't even play the whole fucking game. So I thought it was lame, and it's fitting of a Miami Hurricane.
I agree with that. I will say we talk about this a lot with the value of NIL across the board. Like they're worth what the market's willing to pay. In the same way, like bowl games are worth the amount of effort that people put into bowl games. And it's clear that the amount of effort teams and coaches are putting into bowl games is significantly less. Like I don't even know how much some of these guys who are playing in the games are actually practicing in reps. And that's not a Miami specific or Tech specific or whatever. Like that's across the board. I don't know if this really means anything to the people actually participating.
I don't think it does.
Sure,
I mean, it's pretty apparent it didn't matter to a lot of the Miami Hurricanes because their quarterback and their leader decided to quit halfway through. I'm done with
top
this.
Top three receivers also didn't play at all.
All I'll say
should be
is
noted.
Damian Martinez deserved to eat a living mascot, and he was denied that by Cam Ward.
So good.
That man went crazy.
All right, Pitt and UNC were embarrassments. Narduzzi's a joke. Robert talked about this on the thread. Just they didn't go for it from the 1 yard line on fourth down, and instead opted to kick a field goal and then play more overtime football in a bowl game. I just if you're trying to win the game, the odds seem to be in your favor to go for it in that situation. But Narduzzi's an idiot too.
And he stormed off the field instead of shaking Jason Candle's hand as well. So just, adding insult to injury.
Just an awful coach, awful human being.
Talk about being on brand.
Yeah, man.
Pitt, man.
That's right up there with Tom Brady not shaking Nick Foles' hands after the Super Bowl. But Tom Brady's a sore loser too. NC State lost to ECU, BC, and Nebraska was gross, but the team seemed to fight it out there. The surface and the conditions were horrible.
Stop the nonsense with playing at baseball. I don't care that you're like a pseudo baseball. Hey, you want to go to Fenway Park? Go in the summer when the Red Sox are playing. Okay. Yeah. Stop it with the football games so first off, like that is a case where somebody's going to get hurt.
Well, that I do agree with that. And I know there is a lot of old man shaking the fist at cloud. I love the sport and I don't want this to turn into an ESPN thing, but some of this stuff that the coaches do and these players, like, it's just funny. The venue choice, I agree. A lot of these bowl games, like, do we need them in the Northeast? Like,
no.
The baseball stadium's one thing, but you don't need them in the Northeast.
Play the game at Boston College. Play the game.
Right. If you're gonna do it in the North, play them at the
Trop. I don't care. Like, just make it somewhere south. Also, quick question on NC State. I know we glossed over them. What do we make of Dave Dorn right now? Because
that is a game that mattered.
Because I think you could argue,
a rival.
You could argue that last season, 2023, was Dave Dorn's best coaching job, and I would argue that 2024 was his worst. So, like, what do you make of that? Like, massive overachievement versus massive underachievement. They had so many expectations. I had a future on them to win the ACC, and they just went 6-7. So
it was similar to us, right, Rob? I mean, the expectations were similar to what the Hokies had. And Doran and Pry massively underachieved. And if we ended up, ECU is in state, going against NC State. So that's a little bit more fire to it, but it would be similar to us playing ODU or us playing ECU in a bowl game. And I'll tell you, I would really want to win that game. And when you have a interim and now newly named coach for ECU, and you've been the coach at NC State for years, entrenched, and had some good seasons, you should win the game. Like, you should. And there was reasons that you should have. I know Concepcion was out, but ECU had like 15 players in the portal, and NC State couldn't manage to pull it out.
NC State paid up to keep CJ Bailey as their quarterback. That might end up being a mistake.
I thought Bailey was fine. I mean, for a true freshman, I think he's right at that point where like you could see his career go either way. I just don't know if I trust NC State to make it go the right way.
They made a lot of the same mistakes that Virginia Tech made this offseason.
Think about
they signed like 5 safeties and like spent all their money at the same 2 or 3 positions, and their offensive line, defensive line sucked.
And me and Sam, I know we talked about this. Like, wow, they're really loading up in the portal. Like, they're gonna be a factor, and they did. They went out and they got a bunch of guys, including Grayson McCall, right? And it just didn't work out. And we've seen this now with NC State 3-4 times. We did the Brennan Armstrong thing when they had MJ Morris. He subsequently leaves. They do the McCall thing. Now they're going with Bailey. They can't seem to get quarterback right, and it's ended in disaster a couple different times now. And so I don't know what to make of Dave Doran, to answer the original question. I think it's reaching the point where like, this is what he is. Like, he's going to win 6, 7, 8 games. Maybe he'll pop up and get 9. He can't get 10. And even when they do gear up for these big years like last year, yeah, he had a good coaching job because the team imploded with guys leaving and just quitting the team. Yeah. And so that's on him too. I just think like they need to change the coach because it's dead and stinking. Like, it's not, you're not going anywhere. You're not inspiring any boosters. Like, you just need to change for the sake of change, because this is what you're going to get. Like, and maybe something else would be better.
And he's now about to have his 4th offensive coordinator. Is that right? Because they just fired Robert Dene and promoted the QB coach.
Yeah.
I mean, he is correct me if I'm wrong, but he is the all-time winningest coach at NC State, right?
That's sad.
But that may be more by default.
They're not
I would have thought Chuck Amato still had it, but
Chuck Amato
he wasn't there that long, right?
Yeah. He wasn't a tenured coach there by any means.
Yeah. Anyway, that's enough NC State talk. They had a tough one there. This is some fun news. Kyle McCord breaks the ACC yardage record for a season for passing yards. He did it in 2 less games than Deshaun Watson, although someone did point out to me he did it in more attempts. So Syracuse like to throw it around a lot, but breaking that record is pretty cool for a Syracuse program that should be getting him back, right, guys?
Yes, I think so.
I think that's probably their plan. I don't know. But honestly, at this point, I do wonder if he could go pro, but I don't know.
Yeah. I think with Carson Beck now entering the NFL draft, I think he's going to stay. I think Syracuse is going to be really interesting next year. They're one of those teams that won a lot of their close games this year. I think they went like 5-1 in 1-score games, something. That's off the top of my head, but they were very good. One of the best in the country in close games this year.
And they're the only team that won their bowl game.
Yeah, I mean, usually that stat like flips. You're usually like good teams are like 60%. Yeah, you believe it or not, Robert. I am curious. They're going to be an interesting team next year.
They will, because we have the sophomore slump by Fran Brown, and I know that McCord's not a sophomore, but his second year in the system, when people have more eyes on him and film on him, it'll be something to watch. There are 3 ACC games left in bowl season. We've got Louisville against Washington, Duke against Ole Miss, and Virginia Tech, our very own, against Minnesota. What is the best chance for an ACC victory of those last 3 games, fellas? Is it the obvious choice of Louisville?
It's not Duke. We'll just
that would be funny though.
Yeah. I think it's either Tech or Louisville. I could make the argument for either. I can't remember. Is Tyler Shuck going to play for Louisville?
They are favored by 2.5. So
okay.
If that's any indication,
if they're favored, then yeah, we'll roll with that.
Washington also is Steve Belichick was their defensive coordinator, right? And he has now been hired away. So they got some fluctuations going on.
Who hired Steve Belichick away?
I think that was Bill Belichick.
Nepo hire? Yeah, so he's down in UNC with his father. He is basically the de facto head coach of UNC, if you believe some of the reporting. So that's interesting. But VT against Minnesota, we are 7-point underdogs and Louisville's favorite. So I guess they have the best odds. If Duke even keeps a first half close with Ole Miss, all the shit talk's coming down on Lane Kiffin for all the bullshit he's been talking to. So I'm rooting for Duke hard, but they don't have a quarterback, at least not their normal starter, and it's going to be tough sledding for the Blue Devils, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Tomorrow is New Year's Eve, fellas, and we do have a playoff game, but just in general, it is a fantastic slate of games. And bowl season has been good, something that Sam and I talked about. We got Alabama and Michigan at noon tomorrow, Louisville and Washington at 2, South Carolina and Illinois at 3, Baylor and LSU at 3:30, and then in the nightcap, Penn State and Boise State. Is there any of those games that you'll be betting or any of those lines that you're watching? The Bama's big time favorites. I'm kind of curious what you think about the Michigan odds of covering that game.
I thought I had Miami on lock. I thought I had Colorado on lock.
Are you
I'm
done?
at the point. I don't know. I'm not placing a bet on Alabama, Michigan. Like I think bowl games now are truly black boxes. You have absolutely no idea what you're going to get because we're not at these practices. And I just am not convinced that these 15 practices are being used in any sort of game prep. Like it used to be 50-50. I think it is 100% prepping guys for next year at this point for most programs.
They kind of just throw guys out there.
I
They're
think
not like there's not a lot of like
it's
film watching schematics of like, oh, we got to guess right on this. And
I think it's as close to like a pickup game as you can get.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's like a handful of bowl games where like, you see a certain situation. Like I think about Florida and Tulane, where it's like Florida's whole team, they were playing well. Their whole team was playing in the bowl game versus Tulane. Nobody's playing in the bowl game. It made sense that Florida was going to boat race them. Same with like Army playing Louisiana Tech, who didn't even need to be there. But yeah, with Alabama, who you're already talking about, and Michigan for that matter, is two of the most inconsistent teams in the country. I'm not touching the spread. I like the under. I think that
44.5.
44.5. Maybe you tease that up to like 48.5. But I don't know. I mean, Michigan's offense is terrible. I just have a feeling that it's going to be a stinky Milroe game because he's got some stinkers.
Stinky Milroe game. Yep.
The cool thing about tomorrow is the ranked matchup between South Carolina and Illinois. I know there's another ranked matchup later, but like those two teams were both surprisingly good teams to watch. I'm not sure they were always fun teams to watch. South Carolina a little bit more fun than Illinois, but they're both bringing their quarterbacks back, as far as I know, for next year. Meaning they should both be playing in this game. The line is 8.5 for South Carolina. They're the favorites of the Gamecocks. I kind of like Illinois plus 8.5 in that game.
South Carolina, new OC as well. So they're doing a little staff shuffling. I would expect South Carolina to win this game. Like Illinois had some good moments, but they also had some games where they're just outclassed. Even against some of what you would consider like middle of the road Big Ten competition, like a Minnesota team we'll talk about. Like there were moments where Illinois looked like Illinois football this year. And I think the step up in competition on the offensive and defensive line is not something that they have adapted to well this year.
I did notice today. So that's a Big Ten SEC matchup. Earlier today, we had Iowa and Missouri. And that Missouri team, for as much people like wanted to talk crap on them all year long, they kept getting it done and they beat Iowa today. And I know go ahead, Sam.
Hand up. I had no idea that game happened today. This is the first time hearing about that.
Oh yeah. I was literally like, oh man, that game's going on. I opened the ESPN app and then I pull up the game and it was like right after they got stopped on 4th down with a minute left. So I was like, oh, cool.
Is Missouri like the worst 10-win SEC team of all time?
Tennessee. No, I'm just kidding.
It's possible. It's possible. But when
be.
Brady Cook is fully healthy, I don't know. They just found a way. And maybe we need to give Eli Drinkwitz more credit for being a really good coach because they managed to win a lot of these closer games. The Bama game is I feel like the only game. Did they get blown out by Texas A&M? I'm trying to remember.
They got killed by A&M. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So they had those 2 games where they got walloped, but for the most part, they fought in every game. Good season by Mizzou, man. 10 wins. Can't hate on that. That's pretty sweet. All right. I'm sure people are tired of us talking about the quote unquote meaningless games. Let's talk about the Fiesta Bowl, gentlemen. 7:30 tomorrow night, Penn State playing Boise State. Boise State an 11.5-point underdog. Something interesting that Tom Fornelli brought up in the Cover 3 when I was listening to their preview was that Boise has the worst tackling in the country, or the most missed tackles in the country, which I find kind of funny for a team that's been as flawless as they have been outside of the Oregon game.
There are some red flags about the Boise State defense. And the first thing I'll point to is anytime you like opponent adjust for a team who's in the Mountain West, the Sun Belt, etc., that can do them a disservice because like you can only tackle the guy with the ball. And so, you know, you're sometimes penalized for your opponent, even though you're making the exact right plays. But just base adjusted EPA per play defense, Boise State's all the way down at 65. Like that's behind teams like Buffalo, South Alabama, you know, Rice, like Texas State, who had a bad defense this year. So there have been warning signs about Boise's defense all year long. I think they've just masked it with a Heisman caliber running back and a quarterback who's played really well. So there are warning red flags all over the field for Boise State on the defensive side.
Yeah, they're 27th in the country in yards per carry allowed, and they're not facing elite running backs or fronts. You throw in the missed tackle thing.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's a problem when you're facing Katron Allen and Singleton, right, Rob?
Yeah, well, and Tyler Warren on top of that. I mean, those are 3 of the most difficult players to tackle in the country. Even Drew Aller, when he gets when he starts scrambling a little bit,
he's surprisingly big.
He's not small. You know, I'm trying to look at, because I think it's difficult to really analyze Boise here because, you know, this is a team that only lost to Oregon by a field goal. And granted, that was week 2. And I'm trying to see like what did Boise do to stay in that game, and it wasn't anything Maddox Madsen did. Did you know he was named after Greg Maddox? That's what they say.
I did not know that. That's cool.
Wait, did you? Oh, wait, yeah. Wow.
Are you making a joke?
Yeah, because they say that on every broadcast. They're for Greg Maddox.
I somehow have missed that. Honestly, like
he has like 8 brothers, and they're all named after different pitchers.
That's incredible, actually.
Yeah, I don't know. It was just a crazy Genty game. So I guess maybe that's the factor. Like, can Boise can they turn this into a shootout? And, you know, can they get enough going with Genty and can Madsen make enough throws that, like, yeah, you're right, they can't tackle anybody. But, you know, maybe it's a shootout and it's a classic Fiesta Bowl. And by the end of the game, they've got a chance to win. And we know James Franklin is not exactly the most trustworthy coach in that type of a situation. You know, I'm leaning towards taking Penn State here. I do think like a 14-point win feels right, but I am torn because I think there's a path where Genty just goes crazy and, you know, they have the right game plan and, you know, we'll see what happens, I guess. I do want to bring up another point too. Sorry to go on a tangent here, but if you really think about it, Boise has probably been preparing exclusively for Penn State for a while, whereas Penn State had to turn around and do their Boise prep after playing SMU. I do wonder if that will be a factor, really for all of these games, for the teams that had buys versus the ones that didn't. So, like, is Boise going to have this just beautifully drawn out game plan, whereas Penn State's is a little more thrown together? I don't know. Interesting.
That's a really good point.
Because if you think back to the last, they could have been preparing for Penn State or any number of these teams and kind of bigger picture since the famous Wyoming game that I keep bringing up that they barely won. And so they've had bigger goals on their mind for quite some time. And that is something to think about. We obviously know the star that's on the one side, Ashton Genty. On the other side, it's the 11th in yards per carry allowed rushing defense from Penn State. They know what the assignment is in this game. There is one true assignment, and they are equipped to, get it done with Abdul Carter and all the rest. So I feel like, Sam, they're going to kind of squash them.
Yeah, it's tough because first off, you both know me as a Mountain West fan through and through for the brand. So I really want Boise to be competitive in this game. I think they will be competitive, but it's tough when you look at a Boise team whose offensive identity this year has pretty much solely been hand the ball to Ashton Genty and Genty run through an MFer's face. But at no point this year has that MFer been Abdul Carter.
Right.
And like looking back at that Oregon game that Boise played very, very well. Oregon's offense was really sluggish to start the year. They were sluggish in their next game against Idaho as well. Oregon also had 2 second-half fumbles in that game. So that kind of evened the playing field a bit, as you could say. I really like the under in this game because I think it's 2 teams that want to run the football. I could very well see there only being like 3 possessions in the first quarter or something. And I think 53.5 is a little higher than I thought it would be. So I have the under. I have Penn State full game -11 because I just think they're going to lean on Boise and that defense. And I could see this being a game that's close. Penn State scores back-to-back in the second half, and it's curtains. That's what I'm envisioning. But I'm also a terrible gambler, so who knows?
It is also one of those games where you feel like everything has to go perfectly for Boise. And that's the way it was for SMU as well. And like SMU started the game hot. They get the stop to start the game. They go down the field. They have the wide open touchdown, and Kevin Jennings just misses it. And then from then it just balloons.
Yes.
And so, Boise needs to have that type of game, but have everything go right and for it to continue to go right for 4 quarters. So yeah, I actually just, I have 12 units here that I'm trying to use for my playoff bets. Haven't done any of them yet, but I just parlayed under 53.5 with Penn State money line. So got a little plus odds on that.
Okay.
I like that. I like that.
There are some decent weapons for Boise outside of Genty, and it's names that maybe the more casual fan wouldn't be aware of, but Camper, Lauder, the tight end, and Caples have all done a lot for that Boise State team this year. They all have racked up some stats. Madison, I keep wanting to call him Malachi Madison because of Malachi Nelson. Whatever. But he's 27th in QBR, not quite as elite as a lot of the other quarterbacks that are in this playoff field. The only one that he's close to is Quinn Ewers, who we're going to talk about shortly. But I think they can do some stuff outside of Genty if they have to, which I think they're going to have to. But I just, when you look at the Penn State defense and what they're doing on a per game basis, I'm just not seeing it. I hope that Rob's idea behind the beautiful game plan makes this competitive, because this is the first game of these new 4 games. And if there's another blowout, the rhetoric is going to be insufferable. So I want Boise State to keep it close for entertainment value, for people to not bitch and moan all through the broadcast. But I think that this is the most likely of the wider margins in these games.
Can I provide one more point in Boise's favor?
Sure.
They just announced their uniform combo. It is the blue helmet, white jersey, orange pants, same combo as the Statue of Liberty.
Ian Johnson.
The hook and ladder, that game against Oklahoma, exact same uniform combo. Guys going down on one knee. That's it.
They've worn it all 3. They're 3-0 in Fiesta Bowls, and they've worn the same uniform all 3 games.
Really?
Boom. This is college football.
This is fun. There's the other storyline of Genty chasing Barry Sanders. He is 131 yards behind Barry's record. I know Barry's record is there's more games for Genty, and it doesn't matter. That's the number, and he's chasing it. And I would be fun. I just don't know if he's going to be able to get 130 yards on Penn State's defense.
I might like this is like I have Penn State Boise under. I have Penn State -11. This also might be a game where like just for funsies, I open up that underdog fantasy or prize picks account and just see if I can do like, Ashton Genty over 125 yards and then Abdul Carter over 11 tackles or something.
Mhm.
I just
Genty
feel like
over 24.5 carries or something like that.
yeah, like Boise's going down with the ship, right? And this is like how they're explosive on offense is him breaking runs. And he's in a very Derrick Henry-esque way. He's going to get caught behind the line a few times, but he's also going to pop one off for 40, 50 yards.
It's going to be exciting because I do feel like there's a long Genty touchdown play coming. I don't know how long it might be, maybe 40 yards, maybe 35, maybe 60. But when it happens, and if it happens early enough that the game's in question, it could be really exciting. And I'm rooting for that. Peach Bowl, 1 p.m. on 1/1. Actually, let me take a quick second to talk about our sponsor. College Football Mondays brought to you by Jack and Coke. 2 legends, 1 can, Jack and Coke. It's true. The #1 cocktail in the world is available in a can. That's Jack Daniel's Tennessee Whiskey and Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola Zero, or Cherry Coke. Come right in a can, ready to drink. 2 legends, 1 can, Jack and Coke. We've been talking about them all season. You've got one more Hokies game to watch. Make sure you go grab some Jack and Cokes. And when you grab them and you're having them, make sure to please drink responsibly. Sam, what's the beer that you're having?
I'm having the cold snap again from Sam Adams.
Okay, nice.
I talked about it on the preview. If you haven't had it, it tastes like if you close your eyes and you're like, what does beer taste like? And you try to taste it, that's what this tastes like. And not in a bad way, but it's just very bland. It is what it is. It's a good beer to chug. I think gets the job done. And it does have a little bit of like, it's a good refresher from the stouts and the porters and the double IPAs, Christmassy flavors that we have been going for the past couple months.
Is it a wheat? Does it have like a wheat aspect to it? I'm trying to remember exactly what the cold snap is.
It's got a little, it's got some Blue Moon vibes.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
But it's a lot less body. Like when you pour this beer, it has barely any head.
Okay.
And so it's a Blue Moon with a lot less body to it, is the way I would describe it.
My wife described it as a wintry Blue Moon, like verbatim. So there you go.
We should hang out.
Hey.
Sounds like we have a lot of common.
It might happen.
Speaking of which, I'm not drinking a beer right now, but I did figure out that a restaurant 5 minutes from my house has lunch by Maine Brewing on tap. So
we
lunch
do
and
need
dinner.
We do need to like finalize tailgate plans and meeting up and brewery stuff. And we talked a little bit about it with Billy on the preview. And the preview for the bowl game is already in your feeds. If you go to the 2D feed or on the Sons of Saturday YouTube channel, you can find it. It was Billy, me, and Sam. We kind of did a combo preview, but that's already there. Billy had mentioned the Charlotte Hokies gathering. I think it was called Resident Culture. Was a brewery. Have you ever heard of that, Rob?
Yeah, no, it's one of the highest rated in Charlotte. It's very
okay.
Good.
Yeah, I noticed it was close to like Hopfly and Wooden Robot, all in that. Yeah. Is that the South End area?
It's South End, yeah. All the major breweries are down there.
Very good. That event is already at capacity. I went on there today to see if I could register, like Bill said, because that was the first I'd heard of it. It's already full. You can't register anymore. So for those people that may be looking for something to do, I'm trying to work something out with Rob and Billy and whoever else that we have some kind of hangout in that afternoon, but you'll figure it out from Twitter or Instagram or wherever else, Sons of Saturday website, once we know kind of where we'll be. And then people can move on to their tailgates or whatever other bars they're trying to go to before the game. But early afternoon, I'm hoping to hang with some of the Sons of Saturday crew at a brewery. It might be Sycamore, it might be Wooden Robot, Hopfly. I don't know, but we'll figure it out in the South End. Okay, let's go to Peach Bowl. It's the first game of the day on New Year's Day, Texas and Arizona State. Arizona State, another big dog in this game, 12.5-point underdogs. Sam likes the phrase styles make fights. This is a clash of styles, I would say.
Yeah, it's a really interesting matchup because you have a defense in Texas that has been, much like Penn State, like very dominant at points this year. And then we look at that Clemson game and we're like, huh, that wasn't very dominant. Uh, Arizona State, who just doesn't care about any of this, like they're just going to keep playing well. For me, I think this solely comes down to Quinn Ewers not screwing up. Like if Quinn Ewers just gets the ball to his guys and they play, they're going to be fine because I don't see Arizona State really competing much on the line of scrimmage in this game. And we've seen what Texas can do running the football all year long. Like we saw what they did to Clemson. Arizona State, not great as a pass defense as well. And I think Quinn Ewers, if he just doesn't screw up, gets the ball to his guys, it's going to be tough for Arizona State to keep up for 4 quarters in this game. That's my initial take on the matchup.
Yeah, this is the one that I see as the most likely blowout. And I hate it for Arizona State because I really like them, but I just think it's a really bad matchup for them. I think whereas, I just think Scadaboo, while he has added some speed to his game per se, he's a very powerful downhill running back. And this is the best front seven arguably in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not going to bully those boys like you are Iowa State, who couldn't stop a cold. So I don't know. I like the Arizona State team under. I've got them under 17.5.
Really?
Yeah, I'm telling you, I don't trust Levitt to make many throws here, especially against a great secondary too. So I think it's going to be a really ugly one.
Okay, so Levitt in the country this year is 9th in passer rating, not QBR, just his passing is 9th in the country. Now, a lot of that was done with Tyson, right, at wide receiver, who is now out. There's other guys, but the second leading receiver on Arizona State, Cam Scadaboo. So the other receivers, I'm hoping they've had a long time to practice, can step up to the plate and fill Tyson's shoes. But I do think Sam Levitt, not only with his legs, but his arm is underrated. Like, I really think it's underrated. And so I disagree that this is the most likely blowout. I think the Boise Penn State one is more of a blowout. Is Arizona State better than Clemson in your guys' mind? Are they a better team?
No.
I think they're pretty dead even. I would not flat out say they're better. They're pretty even in my book.
They're very, very close. But my ultimate point here is Texas beat Clemson at home by 14. This isn't a neutral site. The line's 12.5. I'm going to take Arizona State, not only just because of that transitive property math, but because Scadaboo has had this will, and the team in general just kind of has this fight that can't be quantified. I know it's a little bit meta, but that's kind of what the Sun Devils have been all season long. And no one expected them to come out and kick the shit out of Iowa State like that. And they did. And I just feel like they've been super hot. I know they have the layoff, but Dillingham will have these guys ready to go. And I think they can cover that spread. Beating Texas is going to be easy, but even beating Clemson by 2 touchdowns, which I didn't expect, I still am just not sure about Texas. I know they have this like stifling defense, and that's great. There's going to be some angry collisions during this game, and I'm excited to see what happens. I think Arizona State can cover. I'm not going to go any farther than that because I think pulling off the upset will be a big challenge.
I have the over 51. I just think Texas is going to be able to score. Bond is looking good. Golden's looking good health-wise. So I think Texas is going to be able to score in this game. Arizona State, I have it pulled up here. Let me go to that tab. Arizona State is 101st in defensive success rate against the pass. It's not great when you're going to play a bunch of NFL wide receivers and Quinn Ewers. That worries me. But I also have Arizona State over 19.5 points. They have only had one like bad offensive game this year, and that was at Cincinnati. They've been pretty good. I also think there is this like screw it, my guys down there somewhere attitude that they have. They're gonna get some big plays. Scadaboo is gonna run over some dudes. Texas defensively has been really, really good, but what I saw in that Clemson game, if their offense is rolling, I think they might not play with the same intensity, maybe. And I could see Arizona State kind of sticking in this game, getting some touchdowns. I don't think this game will be a total blowout, but I do feel pretty confident that Texas will win this game.
It's funny because I actually kind of think Arizona State has the better quarterback in the matchup.
It's
It's just that they don't have the same weapons or O-line or other things going on.
Well, Levitt said that publicly. He wants to go out and prove that he's the better quarterback, which I think
he is. I'm comfortable saying.
I mean, he has
he
has a significantly better QBR, and he's ninth in the country in passing. So I love Levitt. I love this Arizona State story. I hope they can make it fun. One of the issues that's been plaguing Texas all year has been the red zone, right? Like they just have had a hard time punching it in. Well, the Arizona State defense is terrible in the red zone. And so you've got a weakness and another weakness going at each other. So that'll be interesting to see who wins that rubber match too. So let's put a pin in that and move on. Like I said, I'm going to take Arizona State to cover. I did hear you guys. One's got the under, one's got the over. We could middle that thing where you both lose the pick. I think 18 or 19.
Don't say that. Don't say that.
18 or 19.
If you're also looking, I've looked into player props a bit more for these games than I normally do for college. Sam Levitt rushing yards, if you can find that anywhere, try to take the over. He's a big time scrambler. I think he's going to have more guys covered up in this game than he normally does.
Yeah.
So I would
it's a great
expect him to run a little bit more.
Let's go to the Rose Bowl, 5 p.m. Ohio State against Oregon. Great color war. A clash of Big Ten, Pac-12, and yet only Big Ten this year, which is just kind of very strange. But these conference foes will be going at it. Ohio State is favored. The last I saw, it was 2.5. Buckeyes were favored. They have an elite defense. Number 1 in yards per play allowed this year. Top 5 in yards per carry allowed. Number 3 in passer rating. Across the board, this defense has just been elite. Best scoring defense in the country. Oregon is 12th. Not too bad in their own right. I actually thought it might have been a little worse than that, but Oregon is 12th in scoring defense. However, against Penn State and against Ohio State, they gave up 37 and 31 points. So when they've had to play the better teams, better offensive teams, they have struggled to stop them. I think that's going to continue in this one. Rob?
Yeah, I mean, this is really one that I've gone back and forth on, and I think if we're being honest, I think this is the national championship. I think aside from the horrible loss that Ohio State had against Michigan, these have been the 2 best teams in the country by a long shot, really all year. And it's coming down to this, the legacy here of Day. Can he actually win a big game? Dan Lanning, this is the biggest game he's ever coached in. Like I'm so torn, but I think I'm going to lean Oregon. I just think they're the more consistent team. I trust Gabriel more than Will Howard. Frankly, I think if you're getting the number 1 team as an underdog at a neutral site against a team they already beat, it is irresponsible not to place that bet. I mean, if we're being on to get plus money on that,
I don't disagree. I don't disagree.
But I think Oregon is just so balanced, especially offensively. And I just don't trust Howard in a duel of quarterbacks. I love the over here. I think this is going to just be an instant classic, an iconic Rose Bowl game, and I think Oregon gets it done.
Sam, what do you think?
I think I really need Oregon to win this game if Oregon's going to cash that natty bet.
You've had a natty bet all year for Oregon, right?
I placed it in like July. I it's hard to beat a team twice. And I think the manner of that Ohio State Oregon game, the ending of it is what people get caught up on. But I also think it's meaningful to get caught up on. Like Oregon had a 1st and goal and got no points late in that game too. And I believe there was another instance where they didn't score in the red zone. Like there was 2 second half drives that they ended in the red zone, didn't get any points. So there were like opportunities for Oregon to kind of put that game away, and they didn't. And I think Oregon's a much better offensive team right now than they were the first half of this season. So I feel confident in that. But the swagger and speed that Ohio State played with against Tennessee looked like the best team in the country. I mean, defensively, they were all over the place. I think it is a step up in competition playing Oregon. And I do think this is maybe that was Ohio State's best effort game, but I'm nervous about this one. I'm not placing a bet on it because I'm rooting for the Ducks, but I think Ohio State, if they play like they did against Tennessee, it will be really, really tough for Oregon to win this game.
Oregon is number 55 in yards per carry allowed. It's by far like the worst metric of any of the things that they match up on. Ohio State has been inconsistent running the football, but against Tennessee, we saw them run the ball really well. And if they get that type of performance out of the running backs and Will Howard, we saw Penn State shred this team. I know that Penn State got shredded themselves, but Ohio State has a better defense than Penn State. So I just feel like the quarterbacks, I agree with you, Rob. Like I like Gabriel better than Will Howard. I trust Gabriel in a big moment more than Will Howard, but statistically they've been so similar. Like they're QBR 2 and 3 in the country. They're right next to each other, right at the top of the sport. So I'm looking at the defensive, like that difference, that margin, and like the defenses just aren't the same. I'm gonna take Ohio State because the first time they had to play at Eugene, this is on a neutral field. I'm gonna take Ohio State to win the game. Forget the points. I don't know what's gonna happen with the points. I'm just gonna take Ohio State to win the game.
I think if you're going to bet this game, money line is the way to go. If you're doing a side, just because of the spread, like it's going to be a close game. Who knows?
They both have so many weapons. Like you think
they're
of
both these are the best.
Henderson, Jeremiah Smith, Abuka, and then if you go to Oregon, it's Johnson, Stewart, Holden, Ferguson, Jordan James, Whittington. Like it's just so many weapons on both sides.
These are the best 2 teams in the country, right?
Yep.
And we've known that since.
Yeah.
When?
Since before the season started, I said it was going to be Georgia, it was going to be Oregon, it was going to be Ohio State.
Oh, I think both these teams have proven they're better than Georgia.
Well, now they have, but I'm saying before the year, that's what my thoughts were. And
so why are they playing in the quarterfinals?
I asked you last week when Ohio State won, if they reseeded, would they be the 2 seed?
Yes.
If they had reseeded, would they have been the 2 seed?
2 or 3.
Yeah.
I mean, they wouldn't be.
Maybe Notre Dame would be 2. I mean, I don't even know. Like, maybe Penn State would be 2, but it would be very close.
And that week of preparation for a coaching staff that Oregon has, that could be the X factor in this game when you're looking at 2 teams that are both stocked with NFL talent. That could be the difference here. Yeah. We shall see, but it'll be a great game. It'll be so aesthetically pleasing, but just remember when you're gawking over that Pasadena sunset, just remember the Rose Bowl committee is the reason why this game isn't being played in Eugene. Just remember that when you're watching Texas and Arizona State travel to the other side of the country to play in Atlanta, just know it's the Rose Bowl's fault.
Yeah. But it's a cool traditional Rose Bowl matchup. And the other reason they're playing in the quarterfinal is because Ohio State couldn't take care of their business against Michigan. They should have met in the Big Ten championship and figured this out a little bit better, but I'm kind of glad because this isn't the 3rd time they're meeting. It's only the 2nd time. All right. Sugar Bowl, 8:45, Notre Dame against Georgia. The first one was kind of a matchup of speed and athleticism and crazy talents on both sides of the ball. This is, of course, very talented, but just a different type of matchup. I think I called it a slobber knocker in our last one. I think I've heard someone else say that. So much of my analysis on this game is going to come back to the Georgia quarterback situation. They are playing with a backup quarterback. We don't know much about him, but the little we do know, he's going to play hard, but he's probably going to make a big mistake in the game.
Yeah, and it's like, can you survive that in a close game? Like this could be the type of game that finishes 20-17. And the difference in the game is one team threw an interception, the other one didn't. It could be that kind of game. I'm also curious, though, Notre Dame is going to be without their best edge rusher. His name escapes me. I apologize. It's been a long day.
Yeah. Is it Riley? Riley Mills?
Something. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a big time advantage for Notre Dame in this game with a Georgia offensive line that hasn't been perfect. How do they replace him? Do they blitz a little bit more than normal? Are they just a little bit more passive on defense than normal?
Yeah, it's Riley Mills.
Yeah, those are big questions. I personally, on a value side, I have Notre Dame at even odds to win this game because Georgia's played 2 straight overtime games.
Yeah.
But, and I think Notre Dame, Pete, you and I have talked about it. I think they're very underrated in terms of how dominant they've been this year. But then again, it's Kirby Smart in a big game. And like these are the games that he just finds a way to win somehow, some way.
Yeah. I mean, I've been on Notre Dame. I mean, since before the playoffs started, I've been like, if this game happens, Notre Dame's going to win. Love the matchup. But then it just seems like so many people are gravitating towards that now that I almost feel like, am I discounting Kirby Smart? But I think I'm going to stick with my logic here. And I'm going to say, I think especially, what Riley Leonard can do with his legs is so similar to what Haynes King did against Georgia. Mm-hmm. And keep in mind, like, this is a Georgia defense that, I mean, they got gashed by Haynes King, truly. And Jamal Haynes, like, that's pretty comparable to what Jeremiah Love and that kind of stable of running backs.
I was thinking the same thing, Rob. Like, style and makeup of team. How similar is this Notre Dame team to that Georgia Tech team?
Now, the primary difference is Notre Dame does not have a Singleton. Notre Dame's wide receiver group is, you could argue, the worst in the playoff. I really think you could. Like,
yeah.
They have the lacrosse kid, and then they have Bo Collins. Bo Collins, who would be like Clemson's wide receiver 5 right now. But and so if Georgia can contain the run game, then they'll run away with it. But I don't think they'll be able to. And Sam, to your point about the blitzing, I think Notre Dame was going to do that anyway. Because if I'm seeing
just get after this guy
quarterback, and especially Georgia does not have the great set of pass catching weapons out there either. They've got some decent guys. The tight ends are Lucky and Delp are solid, but like that's not threatening. There's no Jermaine Burton out there or A.D. Mitchell or anybody like that.
There's no Ladd and Brock Bowers who are both tearing up the NFL.
I don't know why. Those were the 2 most obvious names. I didn't think of them. So I think they'll get after Gunnar Stockton. I think they'll control the game through the run. Leonard's Georgia's defensive front is very good, but they're very aggressive. And that's just the Kirby Smart mindset is they go hard and fast at gaps. And that was really what Haynes King did, is he kind of, it was almost like a little bit of a delay, let the defense pass him, sneak back around. He did that over and over. Just be patient, find that hole and burst through it, get 4 or 5 yards at a time. And if Leonard can do the same thing, he's probably gonna have to carry the ball 20 times. And I think he's going to do it.
I've been saying for multiple weeks that this just isn't your older brother's Georgia team. If you look at the defense, they are 37th in yards per play. They've spent the last 5 years inside the top 15. 2 of those years, they were number 2 in the country in yards per play on defense. This is 37. It is, I know the schedule was really hard, so that does factor into that number. But Notre Dame has the better defense, and they have the better quarterback. So I'm having a really hard time like talking myself into a Georgia outcome where they win the game. They could, because of Kirby. Like that is That's the line of thinking. What Rob just said, like he is a national championship coach going against a young up and coming coach. And so maybe Stockton plays the game of his life. Georgia balls out. The SEC truly is just a bigger, badder league, and they take care of a Notre Dame team that has squashed pretty much everyone since NIU. But I'm taking Notre Dame. I think the line's 1.5 to Georgia right now.
It's one now. It's moved towards, yeah. I feel like if you removed the logos off the helmets and the colors off the uniforms, we would all be taking Notre Dame. No question.
Well, Notre Dame doesn't have a logo on their helmet.
Yeah, thank you. Yes. The shine.
Thanks, Jameis.
But it's that Georgia devil magic, right? It's the Kansas City Chiefs where it's just like, God, they're going to pull this out of their ass, aren't they?
Yeah, it is.
Well, I think the difference in this game truly is this is the first time that we've seen Kirby go into one of these games without a either significant advantage or even on the quarterback field. Like I know Stetson Bennett wasn't amazing, but he was a baller.
He was a Heisman finalist.
Like you knew he was going to step up in the big game.
Yes,
we don't know that about this
many
game.
times.
Like, and Carson Beck, like a lot of people hated on Carson Beck. He made a ton of NFL caliber throws that made you drop your jaw.
He raises the ceiling for Georgia, or I should say he raised the ceiling for Georgia.
So I don't Kirby Smart's best coach in the game. That's undeniable. I don't know if going up against a team that's probably better on the line of scrimmage and has the better quarterback, I don't know if a coach can fix that.
Yeah.
You know.
Riley Mills' departure or absence provides an opportunity for the Georgia running game. If Frazier and ETN can get going like ETN got going in the SEC championship game, that is their path to victory. Run the ball, commit to it, let Stockton manage the game, and get out of there with a close victory. But I'm taking Notre Dame, and I think that about does it for our playoff stuff, guys. Are you all good to go on that?
Yeah, I'm placing. I need some units.
Okay,
so let's go.
12 units for Rob. He's got a place.
Got 8 more.
Oh my gosh!
I'm actually I have 12 on the line this week too. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yep, 12.
And you're opening a new account too. I'm just
I had to get somebody else in another state, a new social security number, all that stuff. Yeah,
new identity, all of it.
All right, let's move to VT Corner, fellas. We got some bowl game news via Andy Bitter. Sean Quinn will be calling the plays. I wasn't entirely sure if Chris Marv was completely gone or still hanging around and maybe going to, play out his last game, but that's not what's happening. Sean Quinn is going to call the plays, and we got the news that Bud Foster is going to be in the booth. Sam, what do you think about that?
Sure. Why not?
It's cool, right? I mean, it's kind of cool.
I mean, yeah, like he's got nothing better to do, I guess. No, I think this is an instance where they want him involved in this program pretty heavily as an advisor. Now, whether that's an advisor on the sidelines or in the box, like we've seen with Jerry Kill at Vanderbilt, or if that's an advisor in the back office, which is kind of what he's been the last couple of years. That's to be determined. But I think this leans me a little bit more to him having a bit of that Jerry Kill role for Virginia Tech. And I think that's really the storyline here in this bowl prep, because nothing else that we've seen is really jarring by any means. I think it is interesting. I think Sean Quinn, he's a guy who has a lot of experience as a defensive play caller. So that one is a pretty obvious. And I think Xavier Adebe, him moving up in a role is pretty obvious. I think he's the kind of guy who you would want to keep on staff along with Cam Phillips on the offensive side of the ball for obvious reasons. So everything they're doing makes sense, but Bud Foster having a headset and vocally being involved during the game is a pretty, probably the biggest storyline that we've gotten from this bowl season for the Hokies.
We've seen coaches do this. Like Bob Stoops did this, right?
Bob Stoops, Barry Alvarez.
Alvarez, yes. Yeah. So it's not completely uncommon, but because Bud has been in the offices, maybe it's not as headline grabbing as if Beamer was going to be sitting in the booth. That would be maybe a little bit more of
That would certainly be a headline. Yeah.
but it's cool. And I think based on how things went this year defensively, maybe Chris Marv should have taken some more advice from Bud Foster. I don't know. I mean, he's one of the GOATs when it comes to DC. And I know he's retired from being a DC, but he's not as old as some of the other guys who are still coaching or who have retired. Like, he still had more time on the clock. He just chose not to take that time.
Yeah, he's like 8 years younger than Bill Belichick. Like,
yeah, I was going to say in 5 years he'll be eligible for the UNC job.
That's good. That's good. So we also got the news Pop is officially the starter. Not that that was so much of a mystery, but he is the starter. Schlee is going to back him up. Drones is not going to factor in dealing with those injuries. Officially, as official as it can be, because these guys were not at practice, again, per Andy Bitter, no Tootin, no Caden Moore, no Jenkins, no Brumfield. Penn and Fuga were, though, Sam. And we talked about that with Billy. That's big for our run defense.
Yeah, it's huge. I think there's your two starting defensive tackles in this game right there. And then you have Gilliam and Laws as your second unit. I think you feel pretty good about the defensive line, even though you're without APR, you're without Peebles. You have depth at that position group. So I think you're feeling pretty good there.
A lot of seniors, a lot of depth, yes. And one last note, Jalen Jones was not dressed out. Reddish and Alves were the ones. And that's, what's Alves' first name? Devin. Haven't seen too much of him. So him being your first string safety is a little alarming. I wish him the best. I'm hoping that he goes out there and does a great job. But yeah, if Jalen Jones doesn't play, that does provide me the little bit more concern, I think. All right.
Yeah.
Go ahead, sir. Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, I think, I'm definitely concerned about that as well. The safety position, Alvis got some good run against Duke, if I remember correctly, but other than that, we haven't seen a ton of them. Thankfully, this Minnesota offense isn't, it's not exactly running the air raid. I almost think with Bud Foster, like, Minnesota's offense is so antiquated that he's schemed against these types of offenses quite a few times, so that at least
that's a fair point.
Brings me comfort. But
now it's a little bit of a different look Minnesota than there typically are, because Brosmer can pass, but it's still this isn't air raid. This isn't Mike Leach out here,
right?
So you're right with that.
I mean, depth is going to be the biggest concern. I think, especially if you look at those safety positions, obviously, and then the star as well. I think Keontae Jenkins not playing is a pretty huge loss.
It is
because he's been. I mean, besides APR, you could argue that Keontae has been the most valuable player on the defense this season.
I love that guy.
And Caleb Spencer is a great player. But when they put out the 2 deep a couple of days ago, there was no one listed behind him because Gabe Williams is dealing with the injury as well. So, just nobody get hurt. So
we might need to portal some linebackers, and that is going to bring me to my next note from VT Corner, and that is the Matt Moore addition. And Sam and I have already broken this down, but he has brought in some of his guys from West Virginia. We got Tomas Rimac last week. Great addition. Week 1 starter in my mind. So already bolstering the offensive line. And just today, we get who we talked about yesterday, Sam, Kyle Alterner, 4-star in the 2024 class, according to 247. He just spent 1 year with the Mountaineers, and now we're getting that 4-star talent untapped into our program. It's huge, man. These 2 additions, like, in some ways, he's already making his money bringing these 2 guys in.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at Rimac, his PFF grades, which I know aren't everything, but it's probably the best tool we have to evaluate offensive linemen. He's the best, highest graded offensive lineman for us next year, and a lot higher than Braylon Moore, and I think even Xavier Chaplin. So you have the most established offensive lineman on our team coming in through the portal. And then with Al Turner, in terms of recruiting rankings, he is the highest, he was the highest graded recruit coming out of high school. So
Lath was pretty high, but I think Kyle was higher, right?
He was, yeah. So Lath was like that, like high 3, low 4. You know, Al Turner was more of like a solid 4. So I mean, you're talking about our most established offensive lineman and our most talented, and those were the 2
Pretty
portal
pretty
additions. So that's pretty
pretty
great.
fantastic.
Yeah,
It just occurred to me that Lath is from West Virginia and was
yeah.
considering West Virginia too,
He's from
right?
Charleston. Yeah,
So those were, you can't say enough about those 2 additions. There are a couple more guys from West Virginia in the portal that are on offensive line. Maybe they will come over too. We do need a couple more bodies there, but just getting these 2 guys alone, like my concern level has decreased greatly. We more work to do on the offensive line, but this has just been a massive like last week or so from the Virginia Tech program, bringing in Matt Moore and getting these 2 commitments. Did you have any thoughts on Isaiah Cash, Robert? Like, this is the 3rd safety in this portal class, so we've rebuilt that room all the way.
yeah, yeah. I've heard good things. I mean, it seems like a lot of programs really wanted him, which is a good sign. You know, veteran player, you need that type of good presence that I think they were missing, like with Jalen Stroman being out for the year. You're hoping for that type of a player, where he can maybe help shepherd you know, a Quentin Reddish and those younger guys, even a Sherrod Koval who's older but doesn't have like a ton of playing time.
And Robinson coming in.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I think it's a great move, and give me all the DBs. They kind of need to rebuild that room. So
We got 10. We got 5 freshmen, if you include Stewie, and 5 transfers coming into the DB room. So 10 new guys. We only have 9 in there. So we're more than doubling our guys this off season. So that's pretty cool. I'm excited about the future of the D block. I think we're in good hands there. Finally, Cameron Seldon from Tennessee is coming over. He was a running back, but the thought process is that he's going to help out at wide receiver. He's a freak of an athlete, highly rated kid in the 2023 class, one of the top recruits in Virginia. Didn't do much at Tennessee, just 224 yards. And then there was the thing of whether he was committed or signed today, Sam. I don't know what was going on with that.
He's in the boat for everything we've seen. He's in the boat, and I think it's accurate. He's going to be more of a slot wide receiver than a running back. I think that was one of his issues at Tennessee, where one, he was behind some really good running backs at Tennessee, but also he's kind of an in-betweener. I think for the Virginia Tech offense, you look at something that a guy like Jalen Lane did, that points well. You know, Virginia Tech was in a fight for a wide receiver out of Chattanooga that played that similar position. So this looks to be kind of an upgrade there, certainly in terms of talent. So really good get. Like, this is the one that I think could have the most pop to it of all of the transfer signees. The other 2 ones are offensive linemen, so those are good. Then you have some guys in the back half of the defense, but this is a guy who could rack up a lot of yards in this Virginia Tech offense. So really exciting to get him in the boat.
Yeah, I think he's a needle mover. I think, you know, I think part of the reason why he didn't perform as well at Tennessee was he was learning the running back position. He played wide receiver, and to my understanding, he played wide receiver in high school. You look at his recruiting page, he's listed as a wide receiver. So I think Tennessee was moving him, and so Tech just kind of wants to move him back. You know,
he only had like 1 catch at Tennessee, so they really were not even toying with it.
No, it was a really, and I mean, Dylan Sampson was ahead of him. So like, you know, you're not going to get that guy off the field. He's almost like a Deebo Samuel type of player to me, like or a Curtis Samuel, I guess. Any of the Samuels, where
he is a big frame. I mean,
he's
it's
huge,
almost 6'2",
225.
Yeah, he's big.
So yeah, I mean, whether you're running jet sweeps to him, you know, you're getting him out in space, he's just one of those players where he's so big and he's so fast. Like, just get him the ball.
And he might drop. I would assume he'll drop a little bit of weight if he's going to be playing wide receiver, maybe just a little bit.
Hopefully, he can be a little more agile. Yeah, that'd be great.
We have 9 wide receivers that are scholarship, and the whole like who's scholarship and who's not is still a little up in the air with the 105. But if we're going by last year and the guys we've just brought in the freshman class, we've got 9 wide receivers if you include Seldon. And I think we could handle 1 more, but there are other positions of need, and we have a lot of talent at wide receiver that we're probably good with 9, especially if if we kind of see us move more towards a running first offense, I still don't know exactly what Bowen's offense in its perfect form is supposed to look like, but I think we're set at wide receiver if we need it to be.
Yeah, I think you need to bring in a linebacker. You need to bring in a tackle.
Mhm.
I think if you find something on the defensive line, you might want that. We'll see what Emmett Laws looks like against a good competition here in Minnesota, but there are a few positions of need. And I will remind everybody, yet again, there is a whole nother transfer portal cycle this spring.
No one wants to wait for that.
So I'm just saying,
Instant gratification, please.
a lot of
like
well,
our
you're not gonna
DC.
get-
We all want that DC. Do you guys have do you believe, and I've talked about this with Sam. So Rob, do you believe that our current DC is still coaching in meaningful games right now?
I mean, it makes sense. I'm not going to go out on a limb and say that for certain, but it would certainly make a ton of sense. Like, otherwise, I don't know what you're waiting on.
Right.
Either that or no one wants a job, which hope not. I would think the fact that they were able to get Matt Moore makes you think that they're also able to get a viable defensive coordinator candidate. So, yeah,
it would
maybe
lead you to believe that. Yes.
maybe it is a co-defensive coordinator for a Big Ten team that happened to play at a different school in the state of Virginia. I don't know.
Maybe it is.
Maybe it is.
could be.
All right. I think that's just about all I got here, guys. We went over portal. We went over needs roster. Okay. Yeah, we are good there. So let me just remind you that College Football Monday is brought to you by Roback in addition to Jack and Coke. So you can use code 2DVT at roback.com. Get 20% off your order. If you already used it, use a new email. I just got the Philly Roback. I believe it's called the Jawn, Jawn, a phrase they
Nice.
use in Philadelphia. They have a green version and they also have like a Phillies color version. It's cool. It's got the Eagle, the Liberty Bell, Ben Franklin, all this stuff. But it's a great shirt. My family is now shopping at Roback. All my brothers got the same shirt. I bought it for one of them. I happened to get it from somebody else, and my sister also got it from my other brother. So now all three of us have the exact same shirt, and it is awesome. So use code 2DVT for 20% off your order at Roback. Crave activity.
I actually just got my first Roback shirt. Finally, for Christmas, I finally I got the Blacksburg game day, the white one with all the different
oh, sweet. I love that one.
Scattered Virginia Tech
Is that
paraphernalia.
it has like
on
the
it.
VT fingers on it?
Yeah, it's got the fingers and the helmet. TV.
I got the
all that stuff.
I got the quarter zip for Christmas. The V2 quarter zip.
Oh,
that's nice.
is that
It's a
does
nice
that have the little Virginias on it?
Nope, it's
Oh,
just
just
got a VT.
Okay, just the VT. Yeah.
Yep.
There's two different quarter zips, I know.
Yeah, it's a great get. Still get it. If you didn't get what you wanted for Christmas, buy it for yourself.
Hell yeah.
Self-love.
FCS championship coming up on 1/6. So not only do we get tomorrow and the 1st, but you will get a championship game, I believe, next Monday at 7 p.m. I'm going with Montana State. I think
The people need touchdown Tommy Mellett on their screen. Throwing to Taco Dowler down the seam.
give me some taco. All right, that's
Yep.
that's going to do it for the show. Guys, thank you for being here. Robert, thank you for hopping in and helping us out with these previews. I think we're going to come back next week and recap some of these games, Sam. When is College Football Monday going to end? We've been doing
Never.
This is like 17 weeks. in a row or something.
Maybe like early August of 2025, we'll figure that out.
Oh God, man.
Let's take a week off.
For Christ's sake. It's been fun though. It's been fun. And if you made it to the end of the show, why don't you use word? Do you guys have a safe word for me?
Banana.
Banana.
It's not original, but I like it. Put banana
It's
in
the
the
first time it
comments
came to my
if you
mind.
made it to the end of the show. And until next time, go Hokies.
Go Hokies.